I'm Jackie Luqman, and we are your number one source for struggle, socialism, and soul. And it is Friday, March 29th, 2024. Jackie, how you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. It's a nice day. It's nice, mild weather. It looks like the arrival of spring is not going to be a trick this time. Wait a minute. It's March 29th. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
I take that back. Let me put that on and go outside real quick and enjoy the real warm weather just in case April 1st comes along and it's like, psych, not spring yet. So
Yeah, it's definitely been unseasonably warm here in DC, of course, thanks to our close friend climate change. But it almost seems as if we barely had much of a spring at all. But it's just that weird time of year in DC where, it's kind of warm earlier on and then, gets cooler as the day sort of rolls. But be that as it may, I wanted to begin today, Jackie, by talking about some pop culture news. I'm sure you've seen all the furor around the new album by Beyoncé. This is a country music album called Cowboy Carter. And, it's just so interesting to me how people's politics, it's like the politics leave their body when their favorite celebrity is sort of a part of something that is an issue. And I mean, specifically with Beyonce, as I'm sure many people have seen these images of her in like a red, white, and blue rodeo outfit, complete with the cowboy hat, sitting on top of a white horse, holding an American flag. And there was a lot of criticism of Beyonce and the fact that, she's holding the American flag and all that represents. And a matter of fact, we actually have our first guest on today to talk about just this issue. We're very happy to be joined by Musa Springer, who is a journalist, cultural worker, organizer with the Black Alliance for Peace, Atlanta Citywide Alliance. They are the international youth representative for Cuba's Red Afro-Descendiente Barrial, host of the Grounding podcast, and author of the recently published book, Alive and Paranoid. Musa, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, Sean, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be in conversation with y'all. And sorry I'm calling in from the car today. I'm kind of in transit today a little bit.
Isn't that the story of all of our lives, though? We're like always in transit somewhere.
Right.
Yeah, well, Musa, me and Jackie were just talking about all of the discourse, if you will, around the latest Beyonce album, Cowboy Carter. The reviews are rolling in. They seem pretty positive. Page 6 said that the album revives a dying genre. And of course, a lot of this discussion came about because of this image of Beyonce that was published of her in, basically a rodeo outfit, a white cowboy hat, long white hair, sitting on a white horse, holding the American flag. And the flag really, I think, is the bone of contention for a lot of people, as obviously a symbol of racism and imperialism, particularly at a time when the United States is actively facilitating a genocide in Palestine, on top of any other number of crimes that we can name. And with a lot of people taking issue with the way that Beyonce is using her platform and prominence, if you will, her celebrity, to sort of whitewash a lot of these issues. And I think as tends to be the case, her ardent fan base sort of chimed in to defend her. And I was just mentioning to Jackie, it's just really wild how people's politics seem to collapse at the feet of their favorite celebrity. And so my first question to you, Musa, is really twofold. Number one, what did you make of these images of Beyonce? And secondly, why do you think there's this militant refusal on the part of not only her fans, but just sort of people in general, this militant refusal to sort of think critically about how our celebrities kind of use their platform?
Yeah, definitely. So, I should also say, ironically enough, I'm in Houston currently. I'm here in Houston to interview Dr. Gerald Horn. And so if any Beehive members are watching, don't find me. Don't put a bomb in my car, please. You know. But I say that jokingly, but it is also an example of how we are so deeply organized around capitalism and consumption, right? The level of organization that collectives of fans of their favorite artists endeavor on to support their favorite millionaire artists is more organized than we are as organizers half the time. And so, all that is to say, my first response when she released the album cover, and it's her in red, white, and blue, and you have this huge American flag she's waving. She's on this white horse, and it's very clearly this Americana, U.S. pro-U.S. symbolism. No matter how people want to spin it, no matter what conspiracy theories and dots that her fans are connecting to claim that she's doing something radical, it is a pro-U.S. flag album cover by one of the largest artists in the world. And, I'm not even making a comment on the quality of the music. I actually haven't even heard the album. I'm speaking specifically the fact that her, as the largest artist in the world, her silence on what's taking place in Palestine, her silence about what's taking place in Haiti, in the Congo, and Sudan, on things like Cop City, right? Her home state of Texas has a ban on abortions, for example, that is killing hundreds of Black women who are not able to receive care that they need. And so I think that what I want people to think about is not a critique of the album or a critique of her using the American flag, but how she's in a direct dialectical relationship with what she chooses to talk about and not talk about, and how she chooses to portray herself. People need to understand that an artist like Beyoncé has a team of literally hundreds of people, right? She is the face of many different corporations. Her music is underneath Sony. She is the face. She has marketing campaigns with like Pepsi, major corporations give her a lot of money. And so her silence about something is extremely intentional because she has a PR team of dozens, if not hundreds of people calculating every single step along the way. And so how can you as an artist, and remember, Nina Simone said the role of the artist is to reflect the times, point blank, period. So how can your silence does not reflect the times. You donning yourself in the US imperialist flag as this flag is actively responsible for a genocide in Palestine does not reflect the times, right? The times are millions of people in the streets marching and protesting and organizing and teach-ins and all kinds of things to try and stop this imperialist machine. And then you come out, right? And so I think on top of that, and the influence someone like a Beyoncé has, for example, I tweeted exactly what I'm saying now. I tweeted out a picture of the album cover and said, it's quite a choice to make this your album cover, given you've been silent on a genocide that this flag is representing. And I was inundated with response from thousands of people who support ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery, or FBA, Foundational Black Americans. These are explicitly anti-communist, anti-Pan-Africanist, xenophobic movements. They are very explicitly anti-Pan-African. So how come Beyoncé, who just a few years ago was doing Pan-African albums sponsored by Disney, right? It was just a few years ago in 2020 that Beyoncé gave us Pan-Africanism sponsored by Disney, of all places. And now you're turning around and you're linking up with ADOS and FBA and all these very explicitly anti-Pan-Africanist themes. And so these contradictions in my mind are very irreconcilable. And in order to fully grasp and enjoy her music uncritically, you have to literally turn off parts of your critical thinking. And I think if there's any art that asks us to contort a portion of ourselves, they're literally asking you to turn off your critical thinking and just quote unquote enjoy the music. That should be a moment for pause and reflection if they're asking us to turn off a part of our critical thinking skills to enjoy a piece of music.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that when we radicals critique entertainers, right? Because I love what Mama Nina Simone said about artists. You know, it's like you're not just here being an entertainer. You have a responsibility to the people who are sitting in front of you, and your responsibility is to reflect the times. And for me, hearing that or hearing it again from Nina Turner, Nina Simone in this moment, and looking at Beyonce, it's not even a critique, as you said, Musa, of her music. I don't care about Beyonce's music. Not concerned.
Right.
Don't like it. There might be one song that I'm still like, hey, that's all right, and get up and dance to it. Everything else is just like, it's just not my thing. But the imaging and the marketing that Beyonce does, let's be honest, she's brilliant at it. She is a brilliant marketer. And I'm not even going to talk about her talent. I'm just talking about the way that Beyonce, the entertainer, presents herself. And therein lies the problem, right? Because
Exactly.
if we're looking at what she's representing right now in this new album, country music, I could take it or leave it, don't care. That's not the point. The point is, if she wanted to reflect the times, if she were an artist and not an entertainer, and she wanted to reflect the times, and she still wanted to do this, right? She still wanted to make a foray into country music. That would have been cool if she had been lifting up the erased history of Black cowboys, right? That would have been cool. It would have been cool for her to do that, I think, if she had revived or if she had elevated the revival of Black country music artists, which people don't understand how deep Black folks are in country music. It wouldn't exist if it wasn't for us, right? If she were doing that, that would be, I don't think anybody would complain. It's like, all right. The problem, of course, comes in when you choose a representation of that culture that is specifically a white supremacist settler colonial representation of the culture, meaning the cowboy culture, the range, the people who live on the range, the wilderness tamers, or whatever you want to call them. We have been a part of that wherever we've been, everywhere in the world. We've been quote unquote pioneers, but not in the white supremacist settler colonial way, right? She clearly represents that part of the culture, that white supremacist. And it's not just the flag, it's just that everything except her is white. Right?
Well, and I would also argue, and there's others who have argued this point, and I know myself as a high yellow individual have no point in this argument. But I mean, even the imagery she's presenting of herself, people have been accusing her of bleaching her skin or like trying to intentionally lighten herself. And I also want to touch on something you noted about the genre of country music. I think that we are very short-sighted historically in terms of our cultural production. And so country music was always a white derivative of Black music, right?
That's
The
right.
actual pioneers and pioneering genres of what we today know of as country is actually blues,
Right.
bluegrass, early rock. All of these genres were founded by Black people and started. Country was actually an intentional derivative of those very Black genres to create a market for white people in these genres. And so it's even very intentional that she's saying she's reclaiming country and not blues, not bluegrass. Blues, bluegrass, early rock, these genres are predominantly working class genres, right? Today, when we think of bluegrass, we think of some country man with a banjo, but in reality, the purpose is to reflect the life that workers were enduring. And that's why it's such a heavy storytelling based genre of music. They're talking about the boss at work they don't like. You know, you can listen to in the 1930s Bucka Blues from Parchman, who's writing blues music from Parchman Prison,
Mm-hmm.
and people can Google the song Parchman Blues, right? This is the actual foundation. And even her last album, Renaissance, which was this house music that was for quote unquote the gays, I critique that heavily as well. Because again, this is a working class genre. House music, ballroom, Vogue culture, like these Black TLGBTQ cultures, all come from very marginalized, very economically depressed Black communities and cultures who are using this art as a form of resistance and escapism to an extent. What is Beyonce, a millionaire, escaping from? What is her escapism, right? How is she singing about a blue collar job or lifestyle or being tired of her boss when she's never had any of those things? And so the way I look at it, and I think is a very accurate analysis, is this isn't a woman who had a bad experience at the Country Music Awards and 5 years later she wants to do a country album to spite them. That is a masterful narrative. That is a Pulitzer Prize winning New Yorker narrative right there. What it is an artist, quote unquote, that is really a corporation backed by even larger corporations who want to corner off a different portion of the music market, right? They saw house music and ballroom music a few years ago was being more popular. They said, how can we capture this new market that is expanding? They now see that there's a lot of artists like Yola, like Brittany Howard from Alabama Shakes. There's tons of Black people in this quote unquote country genre having a revival. So the massive corporations behind someone like Beyonce say the only way we can capture and corner this new growing market within music industry is to put our biggest and best in there and literally take claim to it. And so I think the capitalism of it all really gets lost on people. And again, we're not taught in the US critical thinking and reasoning skills, of course. And so fans, they only know, we consume this product blindly, right? We consume this product without critical thinking, and we're proud of that. And so to me, it's really troubling where we are. And if you compare it to 50 years ago, where we had, artists, we had Paul Robeson, Nina Simone, even, James Brown was politically horrible politics. But Jamil Al-Amin and the Black Panther Party rolled up on him in person and literally pressed him and told this man, you need to create something for our people. You have the whole nation's attention with your music. And to get I'm Black and I'm Proud, that was a struggle. Like they literally physically threatened this man. And so I think that illustrates how different of an era we're in, where these artists are able to get away with, at one moment, Beyonce is cosplaying as Black Panthers and is dousing herself in a Black Panther costume. And then a few years later is waving an American flag, or she's playing Malcolm X clips. One of her music video films that she does had, the clip from Malcolm X talking about the Black woman is the most disrespected, person in society. And then again, you're waving an American flag a few years later. Was that what Malcolm would have done? Is that what the Black Panthers would have done? So I think the contradictions are so transparent and clear at this point. It's actually harder to ignore them rather than just to say you don't care and you're going to continue listening either way.
Yeah, and your analysis got me thinking a number of things, Musa. I mean, number one, I love that story too. I mean, the Panthers scared James Brown so bad he wore an afro for like 6 weeks, and then he was back to a perm. And I also agree that whole story about she was mistreated at the CMT, I don't buy that at all.
Nope.
You are Beyonce. Nobody mistreats you anywhere ever. And even this issue of these intentionally white derivative subgenres of Black music. I'm thinking of this one genre that has kind of fallen off in popularity. I don't know if people are aware of something called swag rock. It's the kind of thing that you hear in like a Ford F-150 commercial or like an Applebee's commercial for ribs. And I actually saw a white TikToker explain it very well. He was like, this is blues without the soul. And so it's like this pattern that we see repeat throughout time. And you raised something that I wanted to dig into too, Musa. It's this opportunistic way that Black celebrities specifically take on certain superficial aspects of Black struggle because it's popular and it has political currency in the moment, even if it's clear that there's nothing really deeper behind it. Like you mentioned the Malcolm X clips and all of that. I remember, I think it was in her Formation video, you know, it was these images that evoked Hurricane Katrina with the cop car and all of that. And I think you mentioned the Black Panther thing at the Super Bowl. And even with her husband, Jay-Z. I mean, Jay-Z made it a point to tell us on a song that he was born the same night Fred Hampton died.
Fred Hampton.
Okay. You know, and then he turns around and tells us to gentrify our own hood. You know, don't let the white folks displace you at your neighborhood. Let Black people do it. And so, you know, and I wonder what you make of that in terms of how Black celebrity is basically weaponized against a Black struggle in a way to make it seem like it's a part of it, to make it seem like it's contributing when it does no such thing.
Yeah. I appreciate this question. You know, in 2017, I wrote some research and I called something the representation industry. And what I basically was arguing was because neoliberal capitalism, where ultimately privatization and engaging with the market is sort of the ultimate goal, right? At an individual level, all the way up to an institutional level. Because the era of capitalism we're in is neoliberalism and it's this ultimate financialization and privatization of everything. At the same time, we have this sort of quote unquote representation industry where people are selling their identities, they're selling their likeness, quite literally selling their images and their face. This is Black celebrities are taking advantage of this to the fullest extent. Think about, and to describe what I mean, think about after the 2020 George Floyd uprisings, what were the Black elites asking for? And they weren't demanding, they were asking for more work opportunities in Hollywood and more work opportunities in the music industry. They weren't asking to abolish the police. They weren't asking to redistribute resources. They weren't asking for any fundamental policy shifts. They weren't even asking for body cams or the liberal stuff, right? They were literally saying, give us more work because we're Black. We can tell Black stories, quote unquote. And so this entire class of people is literally the buffer class that someone like Walter Rodney or Frantz Fanon describes. So maybe 80 years ago, that Black buffer class or Black misleadership class would have been all just politicians, Black politicians, sellouts. But today, because we live in capitalism, the Black celebrity class has so much power and influence and access to politics that they play a very similar, if not the same role as someone like Mayor Andre Dickens in Atlanta, right? And so, you know, with someone like a Beyoncé, a Jay-Z, they represent the top aspirational level of Black capitalism in the US to a certain extent, right? We think of Jay and Beyoncé, we think of Oprah. Oprah always comes up. We think of Tyler Perry. All of these people, the one thing they have in common, aside from being Black, is deeply conservative politics, right? I cannot think of one Black celebrity who is worth hundreds of millions or more who does not have deeply conservative politics. And it's because the model that is laid before them is to essentially take white capital and sell it to the Black masses. That is their role. Their role is to sell products, services, goods to the Black masses. You know, another example I like to use when talking about this is liquor stores. So back in the day, like during the LA race riots, for example, we were burning liquor stores and saying we don't need more liquor stores in our neighborhoods These are exploiting us. They're getting people hooked on alcohol, all these things, right? What I'm saying is we had a consciousness around their existence. Now you fast forward 30, 40 years, every single rapper has a alcohol that they market, that they are sponsored by, or that they're the face of. But just a few decades ago, had a consciousness around the fact that it's exploitative to open up liquor stores in the most exploited areas of the city. So the only thing that has shifted is that now it is actually our own people. It is Black celebrities and Black capitalists who are doing the exploiting at the, request of white capital. I think someone who's really good at helping us understand all this is Dr. Jared Ball, who you can find on Black Power Media. He talks about all of these supposed money and businesses that these Black celebrities have are just fronts for white capital, right? So like Beyonce might be the face of a Doritos commercial or Pepsi, or she might be the face, she's the face of Tiffany Diamonds. Tiffany & Co. colonial blood diamonds from Africa, right? From places like the Congo, places from occupied Tanzania. She might be the face of this company, but the company itself and the white capital is still in this milky white hands, right? And so that is how I know that was a little all over the place, but I try to keep in mind that these individuals are strictly the faces and the front facing of the same white capital. So it's like, is it really quote unquote reclaiming a genre of country music if it's the same white execs at the top who still, own 95% of the music we hear on the airways? If it's still the same music label that these country artists are on, they just might be in a different office building. Like, how do you reclaim a genre that none of us own? Who are you reclaiming it for? You're not even reclaiming it for yourself, right? And even if you did have an unpleasant experience or racist experience at the Country Music Awards, does that individual story like now stand in for all of the history of Black people in country music? Like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to really boil down and realize this is just exploitation. They see a genre as rising, they see a bubbling underground popularity in a genre, and they're going to put all the Blackest phrases they can. We're reclaiming this, we're supporting Black people. They also say Black Southerners never get a lot of shine. We're not seen on TV a lot. And I'm like, well, that's true, but now why do we have to do it with American flags dripping off of us? And why do we have to do it in this imperialist assimilationist? I'm from Georgia. I love my Black Southern, life down here. I have never doused myself in an American flag from head to toe. I don't think anyone in my family has ever, not in any photos that I've seen, certainly, right? So anyways, it's a lot.
No, it is a lot. And being Southern myself, I'm from Jarrett, Virginia. I'm so Southern, nobody knows where I'm my hometown, where it is. They're like, what? But yeah, 90 miles south of Richmond, 45 minutes from Roanoke, North Carolina, Roanoke Rapids. And now, people know where Jarrett is because that's where the Virginia State Maximum Security Prison and the execution chamber is. But I mean, I ride horses. I love them. I do not want a red, white, and blue horse saddle. I don't have anything against white horses. But I mean, even with the cowboy horse culture that is really prevalent in some Black communities in the South. I mean, you don't even understand like Black ranchers and Black farmers and the whole country culture of Black folks in the South. It's a very different thing. It's like, but it also has some of the same elements, but without the weird patriotism and imperialism. And I think that's where I want to end this. Like, there's a genocide going on. We've got Beyonce Knowles, who's presenting herself with the flag of the OG white supremacist, settler colonialist, Well, I guess that might be the British, but anyway, you know, the second OG, the second tier OG of the United States. And what did the cowboys of the United States empire do? Those European immigrants that the US government told to come here. It wasn't like a suggestion. It was like, hey, we've killed all these indigenous people. And so we've got all this land and it needs to be built up and there needs to be progress. So we need you to come and settle this land that we have cleared. They never say they committed a genocide. And you know, so you can build up the land. And what did these European folks who became the cowboys of Wild West folklore of the United States, what did they do? They either helped to slaughter indigenous people, helped to enslave Africans, or when they were settling this land that didn't belong to them, and indigenous people were still there saying, why are you here on my land? What is going on? What did they do? They called the US military to come and help, you know, get rid of the indigenous people. So how do we even have a conversation about real world events, Musa, like a genocide, which you think that'd be very easy to talk about, particularly among Black people? But then you have this master marketer in Beyoncé who is willingly no, that's not what I'm looking for, willingly misrepresenting reality to Black people, and basically giving them an out for fighting for their own liberation. How do we even have a conversation with people who are this willing to turn off their brain in order to entertain some music while the world literally burns and people die?
Well, I'll say, you know, one, there are quote unquote patriotic elements in Black Southern culture. And it is as much a problem when there's 20 people at the rodeo and there's American flag flying as when there's 2 million people tuned in and watching Beyonce.
That's right.
So it's as much a problem as when my neighbor flies American flag as when it's platformed by the largest pop icon in the world. So I want to make that clear that we're not saying there's no such thing as patriotism among Black people in the South. We're saying that is itself a problem, right? I would challenge individuals to go down a list of the Billboard Top 100 and map the record label behind each of those 100 artists. And they will, for the most part, every single one of them will fall into one of 3 record labels. Beyonce is aligned with one of those record labels. That is Sony, and also has some shared distribution deals and other deals with other music entertainment industry. And then I want people to ask themselves, of all those 100 artists, do they feel that any of them are politically reflecting the times? Right? Beyonce wants to honor where she is from, allegedly, which is Houston, where I am currently. There is a opioid epidemic. There's a housing and homelessness issue. It is an abortion desert because there's an abortion ban where people are having to travel outside of the state to literally get things like IVF, abortion, and reproductive care. It is a beacon of prisons and policing and mass incarceration. The governor here is a staunch Zionist who has, I believe, purchased war bonds for the IDF, so is literally sending money to the IDF. And then at the large scale, again, there is a genocide going on the U.S. tax dollars with the U.S. flag proudly behind it. Do you feel that any of the artists on the Billboard Hot 100 that are underneath these 3 major corporations, do you feel any of them reflect even an ounce of anything that I've said? And the answer will probably be no. So our job is to make artists like that irrelevant. We have to fight. We use these artists as a pin and a wedge to discuss politics. We use them as a wedge to provide political education. We use them as a wedge to highlight and to expose contradictions, very fundamental contradictions. And beyond that, we need to make them irrelevant. Like, there are independent cultural workers all around us, right? I named 2 wonderful Black women who are in this quote unquote country genre. There's Brittany Howard, there's Yola, I mean, there is a reason why if you go and listen to your music on any streaming platform, you're probably listening to all corporate music, right? This is the McDonald's of music. Beyonce is the McDonald's of music. McDonald's makes a lot of burgers, right? That does not make it the best. It is the most well-funded restaurant in the world. It is not the best. So corporate music artists like Beyonce, they make a lot of music. So I would encourage people to seek out artists who are reflecting the times, as Nina Simone said, and to make the other ones as irrelevant as you possibly can. And that's hard when it's somebody like Beyonce, who's our generation's Michael Jackson, whether we like it or not. Sorry, Jackie, your face.
Ooh, keep me, Jesus. Okay.
It is the unfortunate truth. Beyonce is an incredible performer. I will never say she cannot perform. She can dance, she can sing, but politically she is extremely dangerous because she not only tries to remain apolitical, she appropriates our Black radical tradition and our Black radical aesthetics at the same time. And now she's pushing basically ADOS propaganda. And then lastly, I'll say the album comes out. Why is she doing a song with Willie Nelson and Dolly Parton and all these white people, Miley Cyrus? But you reclaiming this genre, you reclaiming it with Miley Cyrus and Dolly. And so I want people to turn on their critical thinking skills. If that could be my departing message, turn on your critical thinking skills and really begin to understand the difference between a genuine struggle, cultural struggle, and cultural work, and a PR narrative that tugs on your emotions.
Absolutely. Yeah, I want to thank you, Musa, for bringing Brittany Howard and Yola to my attention. I wasn't familiar with them. I'm looking at them now. They give me big Rosetta Tharpe vibes, how they hold that guitar.
Yes.
But we want to thank you so much for joining us today. And I want to remind everyone that, it's not a lot of places where you can hear a socialist, anti-imperialist analysis of Beyonce. You'll only hear that here on Darker Than Blue on WPFW 89.3 FM here in Washington, D.C. But we're going to bring on our next guest for today. Join us in welcoming Abayomi Azikiwe, the editor of the Pan-African News Wire. Abayomi, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Absolutely. Hey, glad to see you finally.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. And Abayomi, earlier this month, the transitional military government in Niger terminated its longstanding military agreement with the United States, declaring the presence of the troops and contractors from the U.S. as illegal. We're talking about at least 1,000 of these troops and contractors. Now, of course, this comes some time after Niger also kicked out the French military, which also saw, a massive militant protest. And I was hoping you could help us understand what kind of impact this decision has and what it means both for Niger and the United States, because we know that the U.S. has military bases in Niger, a considerable financial investment and other such things. And I feel like there's a number of things at play here. So from your perspective, how should we be understanding this declaration from Niger?
It's powerful. And I think it's very significant because Niger is a highly underdeveloped country. The people are very poor, yet they were able to stand up against pressure from both the United States and mainly from France. Remember, they attempted to mobilize the economic community of West African states to send a military force in to put down the CNSP government and to reinstall Mohamed Bazoum. And then, of course, in December, it was announced that the Alliance of Sahel States was formed. They met at a border region connecting the three countries. Later, last month, they announced formally they were leaving the economic community of West African states. And as soon as they did that, the leader of ECOWAS, the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, invited them back. Say, please come back since you're leaving. Come back. So it's really an amazing situation. I think it has very, very important significance for Africa as a whole. What's so interesting about this is that these are military regimes who are instituting these reforms. And it also threatens other civilian governments on the continent who themselves are undemocratic. We saw what happened in Guinea in 2021 when Alpha Conde, who had engineered the Constitution to extend his term of office, when he was overthrown, and they could not do anything about it, the US or France. Gabon, we had a similar situation with the Bongo family that occurred last year. So I believe that it signals a new era that's coming across the African continent. They have also recently signed agreements have expressed the desire to sign agreements with the Russian Federation. And all three of them want to develop closer ties with Russia as well as the People's Republic of China.
And of course, that is something that the U.S. government, I bet, what's his face, the head of state, Sullivan, I really bet he's losing sleep. I hope he's losing sleep because people are protesting outside of his house. So I hope they're still doing that. But I'm sure he's also losing sleep because, Abayomi, does it seem like we're watching Africa slip away, or at least a large part of Africa, the Sahel region, and having the influence that you're saying it could have on other countries around the Sahel region? Is the State Department and the U.S. empire and the West pretty much watching their control of the continent slip away, and they're scrambling to figure out how to hold on to it?
I don't think it'll slip away without a big fight.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the recent elections in Senegal, where a new president, Faye, was elected, the youngest in the history of the country. And that took a tremendous amount of popular struggle that became violent. Yet the US and France are going to continue in their efforts either to overthrow those governments or to lure them back into a more tightly knit neo-colonial construct. That is what I believe they're going to do. For example, in Niger, it was interesting that they sent a high-level delegation, meaning the State Department, people like Molly Fee, who's the Undersecretary for African Affairs. There was also Victoria Nuland. People remember her. So these people are dangerous. And they sent them there to try to convince the CNSP government to continue their military arrangements with the United States. And they said, no, it was null and void. Even after that meeting, there have been statements coming out of the Pentagon and the State Department saying that they're going to continue to negotiate with the Niger government in order to maintain a presence there. So that gives you a clear indication that they will try to overthrow that government. There has been an uptick in terrorist attacks where a number of soldiers were killed just earlier this week. We know many of those groups that claim to be affiliated with ISIS and Al-Qaeda have their origins in US intelligence. So they can manipulate those groups any way they want to in order to achieve their strategic, economic, and political objectives. And that's going to continue to take place in West Africa as well.
For sure. And I wanted to give an example of this deep concern that the U.S. has for its position in Niger specifically and on the African continent in general, because during the annual House Armed Services Committee hearing, which happened to coincide with Niger's announcement, Representative Corey Mills got frustrated, like visibly so, and he started talking about how China, quote, continues to promise railways like they did between Djibouti and other areas to try and link trade. They promise electrical terminal capabilities with 100-year leases to try to create these reliances that has weakened America's ability to be able to compete with them in the non-kinetic, meaning non-military, influence capabilities. And General Michael Langley, who's the commander of AFRICOM, admitted, quote, we know that we can't keep up with the Belt and Road Initiative of billions of dollars in infrastructure. And so these sharpening contradictions inside Africa or the United States is very clearly sort of helping to get at the soft underbelly, if you will, of an imperialism that is in decline. And Washington is just so very clearly, frankly, terrified of being, replaced, quote unquote, by Russia and China. Although the relationship, between these countries, I think is very different. And so I'm wondering then, Abayomi, how you situate this announcement, this declaration from Niger, not only that the U.S. Troops are illegal, but that they need to leave. How do you situate that within the sort of broader issues of facing imperialism as a whole, and how that stokes this new Cold War reality with Moscow and Beijing?
Yeah, it's an international phenomenon. If we look at what's happening in regard to Palestine over the last nearly 6 months, the opposition has been absolutely historic. I mean, we've never seen this type of solidarity with the Palestinians. Now, in previous years when there were attacks, we could see the solidarity building. 2008, 2009, as far back as 2006, in regard to the Israeli war attempt to reoccupy southern Lebanon. A lot of people came out. But since October the 7th, we've seen many different facets of the movement. We've seen the AME Church and the AME Zion Church issue declarations calling for a ceasefire, saying that the U.S. needs to change its policy towards the Palestinians. Now, they represent about 4.9 million people in the United States. Everybody in the church, I'm sure, may not have the same view, but it's definitely an alarm bell for the White House and the State Department. And I think since all these developments have been taking place, we can see the shift in rhetoric on the part of the White House. Kamala Harris, earlier this month, went to Selma to commemorate Bloody Sunday, and she actually called for a ceasefire. She got the loudest applause when she called for a ceasefire. However, in the next breath, she said that Israel had a right to defend itself, and that Hamas, and meaning, any resistance to the occupying forces, need to be eliminated. Well, you can't have it both ways. You can't say on the one hand that there needs to be a ceasefire, that the Palestinians have a right to self-determination and sovereignty, and then at the same time to say that their representatives need to be eliminated. It's a contradictory position. The same situation with Joe Biden. He's making it appear as if he's having a public fight with Benjamin Netanyahu, yet billions upon billions of dollars in weapons are continuing to flow from the United States to the state of Israel to carry out genocide against the Palestinians. So I think this is clearly related to what we see happening particularly in the Sahel region, but also, interestingly enough, a country like Equatorial Guinea, which the U.S. has criticized for decades for human rights violations, for corruption. Now they have United States AFRICOM taking humanitarian aid to Equatorial Guinea, trying to prevent China from building a naval base there. They already have built a commercial port in Equatorial Guinea at Bata. So you can see what's happening, how the rhetoric is shifting, and at the same time, the whole notion of human rights as a mechanism for determining the character of relations between the United States and other countries is fading away very fastly, very, very rapidly. Now, we know the whole notion of human rights was a sham anyway, because we know that the most dictatorial and racist and settler colonialist regimes have been supported by the United States. The Republic of South Africa was a good example. Now the state of Israel, and there are others. So we know that the rhetoric is shifting, but the policy is the same. But it's a reflection of the weakening of the influence of U.S. imperialism worldwide. It remains to be seen. We know that Macky Sall was a very close collaborator with the U.S. Africa Command. We saw what happened in Gambia several years ago, how they coordinated to move in and overthrow Jammeh from office. However, if you read the program of the Patriots of Senegal, PASTEF, which was the organization that Faye as well as Sonko came out of, it's a pretty progressive program. It's available online. People can read it. But at the same time, you don't know what overtures Washington and Paris will make to the new government. They may make them offers that will be very difficult to turn down. However, these countries are a lot weaker now than they were in the past. The U.S. economy, even though they say it's doing just absolutely superb, but we know at the same time, petroleum prices are still going up, food prices are still going up, rents, mortgage rates are going up. Everything is going up, even though they tell us that Joe Biden is the most pro-union, pro-working class president in U.S. history. I think a lot of working people would disagree with that. So I believe that they're a lot weaker and they don't have the capacity that they had decades ago to influence many of these states. Plus, we see the Chinese economy having grown to be the second largest in the world. And even though there are reports that they're having difficulties now, this post-COVID, post-pandemic scenario that's taking place internationally, at the same time, they still are building their capacity and they're reaching out to other countries on a global scale. And their kernel principle of foreign relations is to not involve themselves in the internal affairs of any state that they have relationships with. So this distinguishes China from the United States. The same situation with Russia. It's been over 2 years since these draconian sanctions were imposed on Moscow as a direct result of the special military operation in Ukraine. However, Russia did not collapse. And if you read some of the economic reports, their currency is stronger now than it has been in a considerable amount of time. Their balance of trade is better now. And they have very good relations with the People's Republic of China and other countries. So they were not able to bring the Russians down. And on the battlefield, it's quite clear that Ukraine is failing and failing miserably. They've lost tens of thousands of troops. We also know that even the Vatican, which is a government, the Pope Francis came out a few weeks ago and said they definitely need to sit down and negotiate with the Russians. And he also said, even if you have to wave the white flag, you should do that. So I believe that the U.S. is a lot weaker. They've seen the collapse of U.S. military occupation in Afghanistan. This is just in recent years. People are looking at the resistance that's continuing almost 6 months in Gaza, where there are 10 different brigades that are fighting the Israeli Defense Forces. With all their weaponry, with all their intelligence, their fighter planes, all of that has not been able to defeat the resistance in Gaza. So now their only solution is just to wipe out everybody and drive them out of the Gaza Strip into the Sinai. And of course, this is something that even the U.S. cannot justify, particularly during an election year when public opinion has shifted heavily against the current administration's policy. It's saying that the most recent survey that 55% of people in the United States do not agree with Biden's policy towards Israel. Now, this is considerably a considerable shift in public opinion, and this is taking place in an election year. Biden is in a fight for his life. However, Trump, we know, is just as bad, if not worse. He was the one that moved the headquarters from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. He was the one who said he was the savior, of the Jewish people, the Israeli people, because he was the most pro-Israeli president in U.S. history. He was the one that was promoting the Abraham Accords, that was attempting to normalize relations between various Arab-speaking countries and Tel Aviv. But after October 7th, that's pretty much collapsed because even Saudi Arabia now has moved away from that position.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of Palestine, I feel like we should also mention that tomorrow is Land Day, a day of resistance amongst the Palestinian people. And there are going to be demonstrations here in DC and all across the United States in commemoration of that. And there's also a conference on Palestine that will be taking place in Detroit in May that I hope people are able to check out as well. And I want to give a big shout out to the AME Church for taking that position on Palestine. To my knowledge, they're the only major Black denomination in the United States that has said anything about Palestine. And I must say, I was disappointed, but not surprised that we've heard nothing from the National Baptist Convention, which I have a background in.
I wonder
but hey,
why.
Yeah, well, I know.
This is the same organization that wouldn't even let Martin Luther King be president, even though he's like by far the most legit Baptist preacher we've produced. But we want to thank you, Abayomi Azikiwe, so much for joining us today. And that's going to do it for today on Dark in the Blue on WPFW here in Washington, D.C. Be sure to stay tuned for news and views with Garland Nixon coming up next. And we will see you next time. Peace.
Mm-mm. How y'all doing, everybody? Thank you so much for joining me, for staying with me after Darker Than Blue. I hope you enjoyed that show. We really did too. We were glad we were able to get Musa on because we really, really wanted to talk about the Beyoncé thing. And of course, what's been going on in the Sahel. I had read somewhere that the leaders in the Sahel, in the military transitional governments, have met to, it looks like they met to form a pre-Congress. And that's why I had to have Dr. Nyagoke Nyaka Lagoke on to really talk about what is going on with the Sahel and the Sahel Alliance. I really want to get deep into it because I think this is very important, and Senegal as well, if we can talk to him about that. But I just wanted to thank you all for sticking with me this double feature Friday. And I want to wanted to kind of explain while Dr. Lagoke gets ready, because he is in the background. I wanted to explain to people how I do this setup, because it's a lot from doing the radio show on WPFW from 5 to 6, and then transferring it to a live stream platform. Because with Zoom, okay, the first thing is the station does not use StreamYard at all. It doesn't have the capability to do it. They use Zoom or Skype. That's it. And that's actually true for most technical, like, production companies. Most of them, the professional production companies, most of them will only use Zoom or Skype. And those platforms give you a very limited way to share the video to video platforms. You can only, like on Zoom itself, you can only go live on one Facebook, I think, a YouTube channel. You can go live on several platforms, but it's only one. What's the other one? Skype. I don't even know how you share from Skype to socials, because I've never done it. And if it's a better way to do it than StreamYard, let me know. But yeah, this is the only way that I could figure out to do it, because I didn't want to just have a show that was only on the radio, that could not really be accessed in real time live by you guys. Because look, you guys have supported us the whole time. You guys are part of the reason we were ever on. At least I was on by any means necessary. And your support it's been wonderful. So I want to explain to you how I do things, to let you know that, this is me, as Luqman Nation has always been. Even when Abdus was alive, you see, I was the technician. I was the technical support, because he would have ideas, and he was like, well, and I would say, well, how do you think it's going to work? And he would say, I have no idea. I don't know, but I think it's a great idea, and you can figure it out. So that's been pretty much my role, because he didn't have the patience. It wasn't that he didn't have the intelligence or the desire. He did not have the patience. That man would throw a laptop across the room out of frustration. And we didn't have that kind of money, so I had to do the technical stuff and test stuff out and mess up live, and he'd be all frustrated, and I'd be like, well, this is how it's going to work, because I don't really know what I'm doing either. I'm just figuring it out. So what I have to do is, while we are on the audio platform for the show, which is it's Zoom or Skype. While we're on Zoom, I share the tab that the Zoom screen is on to StreamYard. That's the only way that I've figured out thus far that it can be done. And StreamYard is obviously a better platform, because you can stream to up to 8 locations, multiple accounts on the same social media platform. That's why we use StreamYard, because you all watch us everywhere, from everywhere. So that's the only way Zoom could be shared on StreamYard, to get this show live streamed. And then the additional setup is, on the Zoom tab, on the actual Zoom tab, I have to leave that mic open. I cannot close it, because if I do, then that mutes my audio. Even though I am separate on StreamYard, if I mute the Zoom screen, I mute myself. But if I mute myself on StreamYard and the Zoom mic is still opened, I still mute myself. So I have to keep both of those mics open. And that's really difficult, because I'm typing a lot of times in the background while Sean is asking a question, while the guest is answering Sean's question. I am responding to email. I am, looking at my phone, trying to figure ways. We just found out today we had 7 callers. And now we have to go back to kind of the drawing board and figure out, all right, what do we want to do? How do we want to handle taking callers? Because I don't think we've ever had that many callers. This is the first time we've ever had that many callers since we've been doing a show, period. I don't think we've ever had 7 callers on WPFW. We've had plenty of people in the chat on Rumble, And we had plenty of people in the chat, commenting when we were on YouTube, before we were kicked off of YouTube. But yeah, I don't think we've ever had 7 callers. So now we have to figure out how we're going to take these callers, if we're going to take the callers, because we've only got an hour, right? And we always have, 2 or 3 people that we want to talk to. I thought I heard singing. I was going to go to where it is. Okay, sorry. So that is that I have to keep both mics open. And then the chat comes up because the producer, our producer at WPFW, communicates with us through the chat. So they tell us that, hey, you've got a caller, and I have to look at that. I can see the message in the chat, so I have to go look at it. So I don't think there's any way I can keep the chat screen in Zoom from showing up. I don't know. I'll figure it out. It's on a list of things I got to do that is this long, so it probably won't be a priority until like Thursday. Yeah, so that's not even everything. I think I'm not telling you everything, but that's how this is done. This is how the sausages are made in Luqman Nation. So when we're done with WPFW, I close Zoom, I continue with this stream. If I've thought to do it before the show, which I did today because I manage my time relatively well, I will have put a promo in StreamYard to introduce the second half of the show. And I've sent the guests the link, and we continue with the show. And that's the part where we are right now. So it's a lot. And there's a lot that I'm doing behind the scenes. You see, I'm always moving. I'm always looking around because, I'm in here by myself, and there's the woods and there's the hood out there. So who knows? Look, and it's Friday and it's warm. Y'all know what it is. You gotta, I want to go to the store. I need to get back here before it get too late because it's warm outside, and anyway, so yeah, so let's get into this discussion. Let me see if my friend is ready. I'm going to bring him on. Dr. Lagoke, you there? We're just gonna wait till he comes.
Just give me 1 second.
There he is. Okay, great. Okay, no problem. All right, so I'll take him off while we're waiting for him. How are you all doing? How's your Friday? How's your week been? Lord, it's been, I'm not even gonna lie, it's been a rough couple of weeks. I've got fruit flies. That's the one setback, the one drawback to cooking your own food and eating a lot of fresh fruit and vegetables. Fruit flies. They're all over the doggone place. And it's worse when you like a little drink too, because apparently fruit flies really love red wine, and the bastards love Uncle Nearest. And I'm not happy about sharing my Uncle Nearest with most people. It's a few people I will share my Uncle Nearest with, but a fruit fly, I'm not sharing my drinks with a fruit fly. No. So now I have to enter in this battle against the fruit flies in the house. So I've got these electronic bug zapper things, and I've got 2 of them in the kitchen, which of course most of the fruit flies are, because apparently they like to hang out in the drain too. Once you've cleaned everything up and you think you've cleaned it up at all, and then you just go in there to get some water or whatever, or to wash off an apple, and all these fruit flies come flying out of the drain. So now I'm in this battle against the fruit flies, which is unusual because I've never seen this many fruit flies in my house. Never. I've never seen anything like this. So yeah, I think our systems are breaking down quite precipitously. And I think there are so many little small things that are showing us how off balance we are, the world is, the planet is because of us, that some things are just gone haywire and have gotten out of control. And we're not paying attention to these kind of things. Like, right? It's who pays attention to fruit flies? Nobody. But if you've been paying attention to nature in general, you you kind of know that something is wrong. Like just the fact that we're not really sure if it's going to stay warm after this weekend, because the weather has not, the change in the weather has not been as consistent and as predictable as it has been in the past, right? It has been colder for longer sometimes. This was an incredibly mild winter, very mild compared to other winters. And now here we are in the spring. And, if you are like me and you do like to cook, and you like to cook a lot of fresh vegetables, and you got scraps and juice all over the place, and you might leave a little in the pan, and fruit flies, I don't know where they come from. They just, you throw things away in the trash, and the next thing you know, you got fruit flies. But usually it's a small number and they go away after you clean everything up. These suckers are not. So this is very new, very unusual, and I think it is an indication of something that is very off balance in the environment and in nature. I go outside today. Well, one good thing. This was a good thing. I go outside today to survey the work I have to do on my garden, because it's time to clean her up now and put my seeds down. It is. I saw a big fat bumblebee, and I was excited. I was like, "Oh, bumblebee!" But then I looked at him closely, and he, said, "I'm sorry, lady. I'm just a carpenter bee. I'm not the bumblebee." Hey, but it's very nice that you get excited about my existence. I love that. I'll tell my bumblebee friends that how you feel about them, and maybe they'll come over. And so this is the first time, I think, in a few years that I have seen bees this early. It's been a while, and I love to garden. I love outside. I love nature and all that kind of good stuff. So I pay attention to these things, because when the environment changes, the soil changes. When the soil changes, that changes the way you garden. It changes how your garden will grow. It changes how fast it'll grow. It changes whether you will have bugs or not that you have to fight during the growing season. All of that, all of that. So, okay, we're going to have a show about gardening and good stuff like that, fun stuff that I love to do at another time. But now our friend, Dr. Nyaka Lagoke, is ready. How you doing, Nyaka? You're not going to come on camera with us? No?
I'm here. I'm
Oh,
here.
there we go.
Mhm.
Good to see you. Good to see you again. It's been a while. It's been since last
I
summer.
don't know. I don't even know. Well, last year for sure.
Yeah, it was definitely last year, and
Yeah.
we've got to correct that. But thank you so much for coming on, Nyaka, to talk about this issue. Now, I heard, or I read somewhere, and I cannot find the article now, but I read that the Sahel countries that have experienced military transitions have held a conference where they were potentially setting up taking the steps to set up a Sahel Congress. Is that true?
Oh, but I don't know. When did you hear that? When? Recently or last year?
I thought the picture I sent you, was that from last year?
No, 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 no. If the picture that is okay, if it's a picture, then it's a different. But I can explain. Okay.
Yes, please, because we want to know
Okay.
what's going on.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good. So okay. So the picture that you saw, it was I was in Mali,
Mm-hmm.
from in the month of March, in the middle of the month of March, and it was the West African Regional Conference of the Ninth Pan-African Congress to be held in Lomé in October,
Mm-hmm.
from October 29 to November the 2nd, 2024. And we're supposed to organize six regional conferences. The first one is a series of six conferences to be held as to in the way is a way of building the momentum towards the Ninth Pan-African Congress to be held in October in Lomé, in Togo. So the first one took place in South Africa, in the first week of December 2023. and that was for Southern Africa. And the conference that took place in March in Mali, it was for the West African Regional Bloc.
Mm-hmm.
So we were there, and then we organized. The conference was organized by the government of Mali, and then we chose Mali, or Mali was chosen because Mali right now is the compass of the Pan-African movement at the level of the states, and then for this, in order to also pay homage and tribute to the struggle of the people of Mali, who are engaged in a battle for the soul of Mali, and
Mm.
as they claiming their sovereignty, and as they want to end French neocolonialism. So that is the picture that you saw, that you put on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
That was the context. Now, yeah, go ahead.
No. So
Yeah,
details. We want
okay,
details. What does
okay,
this
okay.
mean for the Sahel states?
Yeah,
What does
so
this mean for us? All the good stuff.
okay, so the good thing about the fact that that conference was held in Mali is that when Mali, when the ran out the current leader, Assimi Goïta came to power,
Mm-hmm.
as an outcome of the People's Power movement, contrary to what people may say, it was not like a regular coup d'etat. It was a People's Power movement that led to the rise to power of Assimi Goïta, and then
Mm-hmm.
he's been there for the last 2 years. And despite all the challenges and the difficulties that everything that the Europeans are doing in order to defeat Mali, they seem to be doing a good job, and they have conquered, or they have taken back some of the territories that were in the hands of the terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
Kidal is the biggest prize, because I think Segu too. So they took
Mm-hmm.
back some of the territories that were in the hands of the terrorists. So that is Mali. And then when there was also a People's Power movement that led to that palace revolution in Niger last year in
Mm-hmm.
July 2023, the Europeans pushed ECOWAS, the West African Economic Community, to go and put into place a military intervention in order to dislodge the president who was overthrown through a bloodless coup d'etat. They
Mm-hmm.
wanted to do a military intervention that was going to shed blood in order to reinstate Bazoum, who was overthrown. And in the meantime, Burkina Faso over there, there was also the rise to power of Captain Ibrahim Traore, who is
Mm-hmm.
claiming Thomas Sankara's vision and Thomas Sankara's leadership. So when people were putting together, or were thinking about putting together that military intervention,
Mm-hmm.
under the leadership of Ivory Coast, my country of origin, and
Mm-hmm.
Nigeria,
Mm-hmm.
and then Senegal and Benin, Mali, and Burkina Faso, they decided, or they announced that if Niger was attacked, it was an attack on them.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big shift, and
Yeah.
many people were surprised. But when they
Yeah.
saw, yeah, when they saw the seriousness of the government of Mali and the government of Burkina Faso, somehow I think that the people who wanted to do the military intervention, they realized that it was not going to be like it's like a piece of cake that they were going to go and then devour. So
Mm-hmm.
it changed the dynamics in the West African region. So that is what we need to know. And I think in September, they came together, Niger,
Mm-hmm.
Burkina Faso, and Mali. They came
Mm-hmm.
together and they put into place that alliance of the state of the Sahel. And
Right.
then so and this is how it is a mutual a defense agreement that they put into place, because the three countries are dealing with two perils, with two plagues. One, neocolonialism, the
Mm-hmm.
French neocolonialism. Number two, terrorism. And then because they need to put together their forces, and in order to fight together against a common enemy or against the common enemies. So that is the conversation about what is happening, like in the Sahel or in West Africa.
So didn't there was recently a huge attack by one of these jihadist groups in I think it was Burkina Faso
Yes.
recently. What happened? What happened there? And I really feel like, you know, people have responded since the attack happened that, oh, see, this is why they need France, and I look at it completely differently. I look at it from the perspective of, if France was so great at what they were doing, then this wouldn't have happened.
No, one thing that we have to know now, I think many Africans understand that. In the case of Mali, for instance, the French have been there for 10 good years. Under the leadership of France, several agencies were put into place in the name of fighting against terrorism. There was the United Nations mission, and in French we call that MINUSMA. There was also Serval, and then there was another one called Takuba. In some, just the
Remember
French.
that one?
Yeah, there were, yeah, Takuba was it? I think the Takuba. There were many other countries, like I don't know, more than 10 or countries that brought all of it together in the name of the historical responsibility of the Europeans to go and then go and save those Africans who do not know how to defend themselves for 10 good years. So they have been doing all those things, and then a vast part of the Malian territory was occupied by the terrorists. So when the Malians did the revolution and they rose to power under the leadership of Assimi Goïta, and then his prime minister is Mr. Maïga Shogel, and then he's the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Mali is Aboulaye Diop. He was ambassador of Mali to the United States. So these are the three most prominent leaders of the Malian revolution. And then they explained to everyone what was happening in Mali. So if you claim to represent the most important forces of the world, and then that you claim to be defending a country, and then the terrorists are still making progress and then killing people every day or whenever they can, then you don't deserve to be in Mali. So the government of Mali expelled the French and then all the European forces. And then since they did that, particularly in the case of Mali, they have made progress. And like I said, they have taken back some of the territories that were in the hands of the terrorists. But of course, it is not easy to fight against terrorism, because in the minds of many, based on some of the elements people have the feeling that the terrorists are in collusion with the French, and then somehow they have weapons. We want to know where the weapons are coming from. So these are all the elements, and then we think that it is the right thing to do, not to count on some intruders or the invaders or the foreigners or the outsiders if you want to take care of your security. And there is a concept that I think it came to me when I was in Mali. The government of Mali is somehow implementing what we can call the sovereign security of the sovereignty of Mali, like in the context of like security. So what, because it is not about sometimes people talk about food sovereignty. People talk about food sovereignty, but we need to talk about security sovereignty. When you can decide how you can defend yourself, and this is what Mali is doing, this is what Burkina is doing, and this is what Niger is doing. And in the case of Niger, they asked the Americans recently to leave this, to leave, and the Americans say that they want some explanation because they don't understand what it means. So this is a very important development in the history of Africa.
Yeah. So, I've heard people say, Nyaka, that usually, especially people who are not revolutionary, are not Pan-Africanist, and don't really understand what's going on in the continent and why it's so important to us here. But people will tell me also things like, after the Sahel states, or Mali in particular, kicked out France, I mean, it was like that day people were like, "Oh, well, what about the U.S.?" and I kind of tried to tell people, first of all, you're not on the ground where people have been in the streets for years in their countries protesting against these forces. Second, we need to let people who are exercising their self-determination in their countries, pursuing their national liberation, we have to let them do it the way it works for them. We can't go in and be like the little Americans, right? The Pan-Africanist Americans, telling these Africans, well, no, I mean, you can't say that you're going to kick out the French and not do the same thing to Americans. I trust Africans to know who their enemies are and who they're not. And if there's some confusion or some disagreement, we can handle that on the way. But I don't think, as a Pan-African revolutionary, that it is my job to tell other people who are struggling for their national liberation and for their right to self-determination how to do it, right? Because that only comes from, I'm only thinking that way because I'm thinking of, well, I wouldn't do it that way. But this is somebody else's national liberation struggle connected to me, but separate, different groups of people. What do you have to say to that? People who want to impose this kind of American revolutionary condescension, I guess you want to call it, where we don't think we're being paternalistic. When we say these kinds of things, Africans need to do this and Africans need to do that, but it is extremely paternalistic. And how do you respond to people like that?
Yeah, so it is a complicated situation. I think that sometimes when we talk about those of us who are Pan-Africanists and who were born in the United States and who are like African Americans, uh, we understand that sometimes we want things to go faster, even in Africa. There are people who think that things have to go faster. You come to power, then you expel the French and you expel the Americans, and then you count on yourself, and then you defend yourself and you do things what you have to do. I think that people don't understand geopolitics, and they don't understand the forces Africa is facing. We are talking about uh, we are talking about people who put into place for 500 years successive and subsequent systems of exploitation based on white supremacy, from slavery, the Confederation here, or the Confederate State in America. You talk about segregation. You talk about lynching in the United States, colonialism in Africa, apartheid in the southern part of Africa. You talk about neocolonialism, and you talk about neoliberalism. Because one day, one of the things people need to understand, I think I shared that here on your show, is that when we look at the features of colonialism, what they did during slavery, they did that during colonialism, and they do that today after the independence of many African countries. I'm going to take only two of those features.
Okay.
One of those features is what we can call concessionary companies. When they went to Africa, we have they were explorers. They have the evangelists. They had also business people who created companies or who were owners of companies in Europe. And then when they went there, they were trying to bamboozle leaders, and they had different pieces of lands that they exploited, and this is how they made sure that the companies being planted in Africa in order to do business with Africans, or better yet, in order to exploit the Africans. So that role of those companies they were called concessionary companies during the colonial time, we have today the multinationals on the soil of Africa, or that operate from the European centers to exploit like different parts of the world, particularly the African people or the African lands or the African soil. So this is one. Another one of the second feature of colonialism is what I call the presence of the Afro-European armies. As they were fighting, when they went there to conquer Africa, they put in place armies, they trained some Africans that they were leading, that they were using to go and fight against other Africans in order to conquer those different kingdoms and different territories. So today, after the independence of African countries, we see the presence of those military bases. It is exactly what they did during colonial time. That system has been in place for 500 years. You do not come to power and dismantle such a system by just taking a decision if you know how disastrous that system can be. So people have to understand all those elements when we do politics. So Nkrumah and many other leaders, they tried what they could do, and we know what happened. So when in the case of Niger, when they told the French to leave, because the French were like the weaker link, if I can use that expression. It was like the French are weaker than the Americans. And then, so they have to know that the French are weaker than the Americans. So we can tell them to go. And because France is not as powerful as it seems to be, it is not. And then we can tell them to go, and they cannot do a war. They cannot. The only thing they can do, they can go and use and manipulate the terrorists. This is what they did. So what I will tell people, in order to not to be too long on this particular question, people have to understand that people who are in power in Africa, like yesterday, they have the interest of the people at heart, but it is not easy to fight against a nebulous system which has many tentacles, and then it can find different ways in order to break and destroy. So people sometimes take all the things into account in order to do things slowly and gradually and step by step.
So I want to ask you, so I always have a hard time figuring out how to deal with this kind of thing. There is a growing, and I don't know if it's growing. I'm hoping it's not growing anymore, but it's a serious problem to the idea, I think, of Pan-African unity. And I have a couple of things to say, and I'm going to try not to be too long-winded, but I'm going somewhere. Okay, so stick with me. All right, so Pan-Africanism is the connection between Africans throughout the diaspora, all of us. It doesn't matter what country we live in now, because we all basically, with the exception of maybe 2 or 3%, maybe 5, I doubt that much, of our people who were dropped off at these locations during the transatlantic Holocaust and other imperialist colonial conquests and things like that. So colonialism, imperialism, white supremacy has been a part of this history to create this diaspora. Am I correct so far?
Yes, of course.
Oh, I'm trying to get to a question I hate answering.
Yes, of course. The bulk of the diaspora, the bulk of the diaspora, it can be linked to slavery.
Yes. So I don't like to assume, Nyaka, that people agree with these basic, because people don't. That's the thing. People do not agree with the basic understanding of what Pan-Africanism is, who Africans are, wherever we are in the world. We are all connected to each other. We're all related to each other. We're all Africans. We share the same DNA. It doesn't matter where we live. You know, these things are all true. So here's the sticky part. We understand that historically, part of the transatlantic slave trade was Europeans, Portuguese, Dutch coming to different countries on the continent and using their military prowess. They came with weapons that our people did not have, had not seen, right? And more military power behind them, right? So it wasn't a situation where like one white man goes to Benin,
Yeah, no, right.
right, and says, hey, I heard that you all, you know, have an overpopulation problem or whatever ridiculous excuse he wants to give. Oh, I have some English biscuits, you know, as if African people want English biscuits. Like, we don't know how to make dessert, right? You know, I have some English biscuits, or I have tea. That's probably a better example. I have English tea and I want to trade with you tea. And the Africans in Benin are sitting there, we don't need any.
No,
We
no,
have,
right.
we don't. And the dude, and the European dude is like, oh, okay, well, all right, thank you very much. He leaves. And then he brings back the army with the negotiator. See, first they send one white dude.
Yeah.
Then when the deal is dismissed, it's rejected, then they send the army and a negotiator. Might be the same white dude, might be a different one, but so now it's not a request. Hey, can we trade with you? Now it's, you're going to buy this tea. You're going to take it. You're going to take this tea, and in exchange for the tea, we're going to take some of those people.
Yeah.
We don't want your money because we don't even know what your money looks like. And then the interesting thing, when the Africans said, well, I mean, they're adorned in gold, it didn't have the same kind of weird value to Europeans that it did to. So, you know, Europeans are looking at all this gold all over the place, and they're like, you know, we could take that too, though. You know, I think we'll take that too. So we're not talking about deals that are made, and I'm not sure if that really happened. I'm just making up an example to say that we are not talking about business deals made between equal partners, equal entities with the same goals and the same promises of profit, right? This is not Disney CEO and well, I can't say that because Disney owns Viacom now. This is not Disney CEO going in to make a deal with Sinclair Media, maybe. You know, this is not the head of Sinclair Media sitting down making a deal with maybe not even Disney, maybe you know, a rival radio conglomerate. You know, equally pretty equal partners in this deal. That's not what the transatlantic slave trade was. When these Europeans came to African nations, yeah, they were able to convince some African leaders to go along with this scam. But we're talking about a very small percentage of African leaders. Most Africans, we know this historically, most Africans refused, and that's when the full military was brought in.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? So when we understand that this is the complex kind of history of the transatlantic slave trade and almost the development of Pan-Africanism, because if we had stayed on the continent, then we would be fighting for a different kind of national liberation. There wouldn't be as much of a diaspora, right? The diaspora wouldn't be as big if the transatlantic slave trade had not happened, right?
Yeah.
So understanding all of that and understanding that at any given time in the history of any given people in any kind of struggle, there are always going to be people internally your brothers in arms who are supposed to be struggling with you, who are not as committed as you are,
No,
who will
definitely.
sometimes collude with the enemy,
Definitely.
who will sometimes be an agent and you didn't realize it.
Mhm.
So let me ask you, Naka, well, when that happens, what do you do? Do you condemn the entire movement of Pan-Africanism because some some African leaders did participate in the trade of Africans to Europeans for an enslavement that even those African leaders did not understand what was going to happen. And they didn't understand what was really happening to people until years later. And some
Yeah.
of those leaders, their descendants have now apologized. So after we've done all this, what do you say to people who still have this antagonism toward these African leaders and their descendants? And how does this conversation fit into the conversation of international solidarity for Pan-Africanist struggles and in the conversation for reparations for Africans who are the descendants of and the continued victims of the very colonialism and imperialism and white supremacy that brought us to where we are in the diaspora? How
Okay.
without cussing people out? Because
I'm
I'm
going
at the cussing people out stage, Naka.
I'm going to try and see if I can, if I can, but I'm going to try and give a couple of answers
Okay.
to your multiple layer
I know I gave you this big
multiple layers to
ball
your
of
questions. Okay, so the first thing is that yes, I've been living here. I've seen some people then who may have that anger, that anti, if I would say that, I wouldn't say Afrophobia, that against people who come from Africa. But the one we need to know is that uh, it's not like we need to excuse the African leaders who were in the leadership position during slavery. But like you said, we don't know, many of the people who are talking, they don't know the full story.
Mm,
Uh, we are lucky because we have studied a little bit of history, and then we have an idea how it happened. People like W.B. Du Bois, Molefia Sante, and many others, have written about Franklin Hope. They have written about, those, that moment in the history of Africa. Yes, they
mhm,
were not, as you were talking about business in the beginning. One thing that is not so popular, that is not well known, it is that
mhm,
when slavery was ending, the Europeans claimed to engage Africans in a different type of commerce that they called legitimate commerce. Legitimate commerce as to oppose it to the illegitimate commerce, which was slavery.
mhm,
And then between colonialism and slavery, there was that era of legitimate commerce. But the reality is that the legitimate commerce led to the colonial movement as we knew it, that started a little bit before the Berlin Conference, and that was enforced or that was intensified after the Berlin Conference. So that's one element. So there was never a moment where in the history of Africa and the European in the last 500 years that they treated with Africa as equal. Never.
mhm,
And then we're not going to, you said it already, I'm not going to talk more about that. They use different type of techniques or tactics in order to deceive people, in order to take the land and exploit them. So this is well documented. Now, uh, today, people have to understand that the Pan-African movement, and this is what I want to say. The Pan-African movement, despite everything that you spoke about, when the Pan-African movement was articulated, and even before the Pan-African movement was structured, one thing that many people don't know is that for 200 years, at least here in the Americas, there were many descendants of slaves who wanted to reconnect with Africa. That's it. That's a reality.
Yep.
And then there was a time in the naming of many of the agencies that they created, the adjective African was almost everywhere. Just one example, the African Episcopal Methodist Church, which was created by Richard Allen, 1816 to 1817. So there were several organizations like that. We talk about the beginning of the 19th century. Number one. Number two, in the context of the Back to Africa movement, there were several generations, because I know a little bit more about that part of the history in the context of the United States. There were several generations of people who one of the first ones was Paul Coffey, who was involved in the expedition in Liberia and then in Sierra Leone. After Paul Coffey, we have leaders like Edward Blyden, we have Martin Delany, and we have Alexander Cromwell, and we had Henry McTurner. All of them, generation after generation, somehow they try to connect with Africa, and then this is why that movement of the Back to Africa movement was going somehow to mobilize Black Americans, Blacks in the Americas, about if they have to stay in the nightmare of the United States of America or the Americas, or if they have to go back to Africa. So my point is that even though they knew that slavery brought them here, or slavery brought the ancestors to the Americas, they still wanted to connect to the motherland of which is Africa. So now when the Pan-African movement now was going to be structured, but of course, I mentioned those who wanted to go back to Africa. There were some other leaders who opposed the movement. The greatest is what? Frederick Douglass. Even Richard Allen opposed the movement. Booker T. Washington opposed the movement. But even those who opposed the movement somehow did not reject that imperative, that need to reconnect with Africa or with other parts of the world where we can see Africans or people of African descent. Now, when the Pan-African movement was created in 1900, if I can say that, with the first conference organized by Henry Sylvester Williams, we saw the involvement of the descendants of slaves in that movement. They were the one who started the movement. The Africans were not involved in the movement in the beginning. So W.B. Du Bois, George Padmore, Marcus Garvey, Henry Sylvester Williams, and Anna Julia Cooper, and many others, they were involved in the different Pan-African movements, Pan-African gatherings that were put into place in order to fight against white supremacy, be in the Americas or be in Africa. So my point is that those who have that resentment against Africans, they don't know that history. And then the biggest Pan-African conference, which was organized on the continent of Africa in 1958, under the leadership of Kwame Nkrumah when Ghana became independent, the chief architect, the one who really put the ones who put that conference together, beside Kwame Nkrumah, who was an African, is not George Padmore from St. Clair Drake from the United States was involved with the conference. Bill Sutherland, Black American, was involved in the conference, and Ras McConen from the Caribbean. They were the ones, the chief architects of the conference that took place. So yes, there was a moment. There was like a deep solidarity between Africans, the people of African descent, within or through or under a dynamic Pan-African movement, and then no one can erase that. So of course, when the leaders who were claiming Pan-Africanism they were eliminated, either physically or politically, the movement went into hibernation. But even the Free Nelson Mandela movement, who were those who were involved in the movement? Many here on this land. That's why when Mandela came out of prison, he came here, met with Rosa Parks, met with his wife, and met with many who were here who fought against segregation. And he was talking about that unbreakable umbilical cord between South Africans and then Black Americans. So yes, these are elements. It is online. It is in books. And so when I do what I'm doing, I have the support of people like Jackie Luqman, Sean Blackman, Eugene Perrier, Maurice Carney, Netfa Freeman, and so of course some other white people like Brand Becker or Heather Bello, who are supporting our struggle. So, and then that's my example. I can give the example of many other people who are supporting the revolution in Mali. The revolution in Mali. I have Dr. Poe here at Lincoln University. Listen, sometimes I don't even want to talk about Burkina Faso. He's he's so engaged and involved in what is happening in West Africa. I said, Dr. Poe, can you give me a break today? Can I talk about
no.
No. So there are many other examples. So yes, and then now that we are experiencing another golden age of the Pan-African movement, so we are, doing what Nkrumahs and Du Bois and Padmore, what they did, and this is what we are doing, and we are making progress. So this is what I want to say about that.
I'm so glad you said all that. And I'm really glad you named all those names, because I can't remember all those names. Medication. That's really what it is. So I really am glad you brought all that up, because I think this is a moment where there's a lot of talk about unity, and people are looking at Palestine in particular, and they should be, because people are looking at the way the Palestinian people have struggled in the face of 75 plus years. It's really been around. It's actually been about 76, I think 78 years, tell you the truth, because people always started at 1948 and the Nakba, but the massacres and the destruction of villages and the displacement of Palestinians started before the 1948 UN vote to partition Palestine ever took place. That is the absolute truth. But people are looking at, Palestinians and saying things like, and I've heard people say this, it drives me nuts. Why can't we be that unified? We could be, and we don't have to be in the same material conditions that Palestinians are in. The problem is we like to believe a bunch of stuff that the very system we are fighting tells us about ourselves and other people. So we spend time having these conversations about everything but what we're unified on. That was the whole point of of me bringing that question up. And I hope that the person who compelled me to bring this up understands what we're saying. Look, whatever issues you have with the history of how we all got here, okay. I'm not even going to argue with people about whether their history is correct or not. Because if your problem is if you're still pissed off at these 5 African leaders who may have participated in the slave trade, who did participate in the slave trade, if you're still more pissed off at that than you are at what this system is doing to people, Africans in the Congo, to Africans in the Sahel, to people in the South, the entire continent, and Palestine, and everywhere else this system is abusing people. If you're still pissed off at some 5 African leaders that participated for whatever reason in the transatlantic slave trade, but you don't have any heat or any smoke, and you're not paying any attention, don't ever see you talking about or doing anything about what is going on to oppress us right now, then you're the reason we don't have unity.
Yeah. So now, one thing I wanted to, because there was one aspect of your question which was about reparation. So
Yes, that's right.
I was in Ghana in November 2023, and there was like a major conference on reparations, and then so we commend the Ghanaian government for putting together that conference, and then there were many people from here who were there. Dr. Ron Daniel was there, and then some.
He's a mess,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Dr. Ron Daniel was there. Some other people were there, and some people from the Caribbean, Latin America. It was like a major conversation. And then So when sometimes we talk about reparations, people think, oh, Africans do not deserve reparations. I've heard that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, people,
Mhm.
Pan African is no reparations is just for Black Americans, like Americans, Blacks in the Americas. So one day I was teaching like a couple of years ago, my student here at Lincoln University. That's like was one of my like it was that session was great, but the class it was like a beautiful moment I had with the students. And I asked them, so do you agree with reparations? All of them, Black Americans, all of them, yes, we need to have reparations. So they were excited. I said, do you think that I too can have reparation? They said no. I said, why? There was I remember there were some of them. So there were some of them, what's the name, there was one of my students, Blue. She was looking at me, and then there was another one, Zidane. You look at me like this, like somehow, what are you talking about? I said, but listen, I need to have reparation to. They said, no, you don't, you can't. I said, but why? And I was trying to play with them. Why? They say, no, you're not Black American, you're African.
See,
Then
did you
so
laugh? Did you
what?
laugh at your students though?
No. I did not laugh. I did not laugh at them. Them are
I
people.
know.
We laugh together. So I was doing that, to in order to lead them to the real
Mm-hmm.
conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So they say, all of them, and there was Drake, who was the president of the Student Government Association. Drake
Uh-huh.
said, and he gave me a beautiful answer. He said, no, the reparation that we want to have, you're not supposed to have that reparation, but but you can have your kind of reparation in Africa from another group of white people who did colonialism in Africa. And I
Okay.
said,
Right there. Right there.
I'm saying though,
Nyaka.
yes, and I'm saying that's a student, somebody he was not even 21, who gave me that answer. What I'm trying to say is that uh, yes, the media are powerful, they can divide us, but there are some people who can understand. And when Drake said that, then I asked them if they agree with Drake. Then the ones
Mm-hmm.
who were saying that I did not, I was not supposed to have my check of like a piece of a check that I could have had from like a bad reparation. They say no. Okay, they say, oh, yes, we agree with Drake. Then that in that case, yes, you too, as an African, you can have your reparation. I said, exactly. That is the conversation I want us to have. We
Mm-hmm.
are suffering under the similar or common systems of exploitation. You guys had slavery, but we also suffered from slavery, but we
Yes.
suffered more, if I can say
Right.
that,
From ongoing colonialism.
colonialism and from neocolonialism. Well,
Neocolonialism.
neocolonialism. So, and
Right.
then also you guys here, I fight under suffering institutionalized racism.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
we have the same fate, and that's why together we should ask for reparation for the Africans, for people in the United States, for Black Americans and Black
Mm-hmm.
Caribbeans. So that was the conversation I had. So I just wanted to share, and then so I think they understood, and that's the debate that we're engaging with those who think that Africans do not deserve reparations.
And see, these are the conversations that I want us to have. This is the interesting thing. This is the funny thing about organization and connecting with people and revolutionary political education. Um, these kinds of struggles that we have with our people, they're good for us, right? They're good. It is good for us to get down in the trenches and disagree about this, that, and the third respectfully. Disagree respectfully. People don't know how to do that. And I don't have any patience with those people because they're grown. They're not children. They're not just, just being released into the world. They understand how to be disrespectful, how to be respectful and disagree with people. But when they get online, they just figure they don't have to. And because I'm not right in front of them, I guess they think they're safe. But I mean, struggle, these guys, it's not a problem to disagree with, I don't even have a problem with the ADOS folks, like, Africans and Caribbeans. They don't deserve reparations, because I want to hear why they believe that. Because I know
Yeah.
it's something silly. I know it's something crazy and ahistorical, but I want to I give them an opportunity to say what they have to say. And I tell them what I know. And if they take it, fine, great. I've made a new, we made a new comrade or whatever. If they don't, then they can go on off and do their thing. They can just stay out of our way so we can do our work. But I think there is a way to have these discussions, understanding that, we all come to it with different understandings, different level of knowledge of history. We know our educational system in this country is garbage. So we know most of us don't know our own history. And as we learn it, the older we are, there's some that we miss. We can't know everything, but we can share knowledge. We can share the information we have, but we cannot do it. We can't share information. We can't build unity with people basically turning their anger about something into like a personal into a personal crusade. Listen, BB, Rodriguez, sweetie, honey, dear, this is not a personal affront against you. Just because you used to attend Lincoln University, Dr. Lagoke is not sitting here insulting you because he is teaching his students history that you don't agree with or that you don't think is important. That's really not the way I've seen you engage people on this issue of reparations in these chats, BB, has been consistently antagonistic. It's been consistently negative. It has been consistently nastier and nastier and nastier. Then you start calling my name in the chat, thinking I don't see it and thinking I'm not going to say nothing. I'm sick of doing this with you. I really am. It doesn't make any sense why you keep doing this. And
Jackie,
if you disagree, just don't watch.
Jackie,
Because the alternative is, when you start insulting other people in the chat, like I've seen you do, BB, I'm going to block you. Because we can't have disrespectful discourse among a bunch of people who are supposed to be fighting for liberation together. This is my show, so I can do that on my show.
So
I just don't know how to say this any other way at this point.
So what is happening? What did he say? I saw it. What he's trying to say?
So the first one that really kind of, well, it's a whole bunch. There's this one: 5 African leaders, 36,000 recorded slave trafficking voyages from 1593 to 1882, 12.5 million ancestors betrayed, trafficked, sold out. So they were the only people trafficking slaves out of Africa. Those 5 African leaders, they were the only ones. The Portuguese, the Dutch, the French, the English, they weren't involved. You are focusing on 5 African leaders, and I don't even know if that's true or not, of those 5 African leaders, because did they have ships?
No, listen. Yeah. No. So listen, for me, this is for me anyway. So when I talk about slavery, based on what I know, it's not something that happened like in 40 years. Do you understand? That's something that happened in hundreds of years. So we can have many Africans who were involved, kings, some other people involved in this, like in slavery. But if people think that the primary responsibility is on the Africans, then I think that they're making a mistake, because the Europeans, people who are talking, they should know that when we teach the African history, that it was after the Battle of Ceuta in 1415 when the Europeans, the Portuguese, saw this northern part of Africa, and then when they discovered the stores of spices, and then they decided to go to the source of the spices. So Henry the Navigator, the prince, put together a navigation school in 1419. So then they were going to engage and undertake that exploration on the sea to go, and then eventually they conquered the source of the spices somewhere where today we have Indonesia, which it was, and it was a number of islands called the Spices Island, the Moluccas Islands. And later on, that they had the weapons. They decided that they were going to engage in that system that we know came after the indentured servitude and many other things. So I'm not going to come and say that the Africans did not do anything, but seriously, it's the same thing today. Uh, Many of those Black Americans here, why they can't go and try and free the people? Why they can't? Why those people are going to enrich themselves, and then they don't care about the blacks who are suffering from drug, who are suffering from homelessness? Why they can't do that? But it is not, are we going to blame those people? Or are we going to look at this system put into place by white supremacists who make sure that Black people, do not do the right thing in order to save themselves? So that's why we talk about systems. And then it is the same way when people think that, those Africans are so stupid, the French are there. It is not easy. Like I said in the beginning, they put into place a system which is in force for 500 years. You don't come and dismantle the system one day. Same thing with slavery, same thing with colonialism, same thing with neocolonialism, same thing with segregation. And then we know the fate of King, of Malcolm, and many others who try to do the right thing. So for me, we have to respect the lives, the struggles, and the suffering of those who endure those systems. And not all the people in Africa benefited from slavery. It was like a small number of people who thought that they needed to do it, and they were doing that. But please, we are not here to have a debate, for us to feel more resentment against each other. I read a comment on the screen that I don't know what it means, but the story that I just told you, it means, I told you, sir, if you can listen, I was talking about how I was laughing with my students. I did not laugh at them.
Right,
And
yeah.
people who told me at Lincoln University, they know that my life is about the student and the Black Americans, most of them, and how much I love them. Sometimes when people talk about me, the people know that I'm a caring professor. Please, you have to respect people. If you think that you can come here and go after Jackie Luqman, you are wasting your time, because you can be angry, you can be resentful, but things are happening in Africa, and then things are happening in the United States. When the Black Lives Matter movement was launched, the solidarity that came from Africa, you don't have an idea. From the leaders of the states to the people in the street. When you go to France, you go to Colombia, everywhere, Black people were in solidarity with the Black Americans. Please. So we are doing serious business and we are not wasting our time. Now, so we are making progress, and then eventually we will have many more victories, and then that's the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's end on
Senegal, on Senegal.
Yeah, and then tell us more about the conference if you can.
Okay,
Because
yes, okay.
I know it's still kind of in the planning phases.
Yeah,
but...
yeah, I will talk about Senegal first, and I'm going to end with the conference.
Okay.
With the Congress. So this is an expression that those who are listening to me, Pan-Africanism is experiencing another golden age. We have the Black Lives Matter movement here, which was about the solidarity between Africans on the continent and the Black Americans and Blacks all over the world, even though internationalism was also part of the struggle of the Black Lives Matter movement. We have the roads must fall in South Africa, in Southern Africa. The economic freedom fighters launched a movement for the economic liberation of Africa. The party is led by Julius Malema. And in the context of Africa, there are some People's Power movement against the CFA Frank, also against the presence of the military presence of the European soldiers, namely France and then AFRICOM of the United States. And then we have now those people's power movement that led to the rise to power of military officers in Mali, in Mali, in Burkina Faso, and in Niger. And so this is what is happening. So many people who do not like Pan-Africanism try to dismiss the historical significance of the second golden age of Pan-Africanism by saying that the leaders who are in power in Mali, Burkina, and Niger are officers, military officers who do not have any legitimacy, even though we know that they came to power after people took to the streets, for months, as they want to change, as they were fighting against neocolonialism and terrorism. And now in Senegal, there is a political party called PASTEF, which is
PASTEF?
PASTEF,
Oh, PASTEF. Okay.
Yeah, PASTEF, and then I think the link is PASTEF.org. That's the you can see. That's the name of that's the website of a political party created. I don't know if it's 2014 or 2014. It was created by a number of people, a group of people who were disillusioned with the political system in Senegal. They rejected people from the left, they rejected people from the right, and they wanted to build a political party based on integrity. And then, as they wanted to fight against corruption, and they wanted to fight against French neocolonialism. They were talking about Pan-African or Pan-Africanist preference in the way they wanted to do commercial deals with the outsiders. And so the leader of that party is called Ousmane Sonko. So you found the website, right? Okay. So tell me, you can read some French, right? You can read French?
No.
I think Google. No. Yeah, no problem.
I cannot read French. Oh, you know what? I have not found the website. I just found a bunch of articles about the political party.
No, the PASTEF.org. You can't find that.
Okay, hold on. Let me try that again. Wait, because I probably did something wrong. There we go. Okay, yeah, it's in French.
Okay, so when the first president of Senegal, like the one we know, the leader of Senegal, Senghor left power, he was replaced by his protege Abdou Diouf, and Abdou Diouf continued, the first president's system, and then later on there was Abdoulaye Wade, who was the leader of the opposition, who came to power. He was a Pan-Africanist. Somehow, when he came to power, he did not dismantle the neocolonial system that was in place. And then he wanted to change the constitution to run for the third term, even though there is a limitation of terms in Senegal. And then another leader called Macky Sall, who was with him in the same party, left his party, organized a movement, became the face of a movement that wanted to stop Abdoulaye Wade, who wanted to be in power for the third term, and Macky Sall came to power. So when Macky Sall came to power, he was in power for the last 10 years or so. We thought that Macky Sall was going to somehow be that embodiment of democracy. But what did he do? Money embezzlement, cracking down dissenting views, promoting French neocolonialism. He was on the side of the French when they wanted to do the military intervention against Niger. So as he was doing that PASTEF political party that claims Pan-Africanism, that claims one of the founding fathers of Senegal, Mamadou Dia, who was in favor of the sovereignty of Senegal, that claims the vision of Thomas Sankara, that claims the vision of Cheikh Anta Diop. That party mobilized the Senegalese and led a people's power movement that stopped Macky Sall, who wanted to change the constitution to be in power for the third term. So they used Macky Sall in his system, used the judicial system in order to imprison Ousmane Sonko, in order to prevent him from being the candidate of his party. And then as Macky Sall was in prison, and as Ousmane Sonko was in prison, he was there with one of his friends, with many others, and the party chose somebody else, friend of Ousmane Sonko, whose name is Bassirou Diomaye Faye. And then, we don't know, by a twist of fate, the president took an amnesty law, maybe because he wanted to protect himself from the eventual prosecution for the money investment that he did. And then he freed Ousmane Sonko, thinking that Pastef could not win the elections. And Bassirou Diomaye Faye defeated the candidate of the incumbent president on March the 24th. It was a major earthquake in the history of Africa. First round, and then they did not have to go to the runoff.
Wow, that rarely happens anywhere.
It happened on Sunday, on the 24th of March.
Yo,
So
that is amazing.
They don't see that in the news because, of course, when you have beautiful stories that come from Africa, the European media will not talk about it.
No, we can't talk about that.
They will only talk about things when people die. If there were 5 people who had died that day, it would have been the headlines like on international media. So now those who were trying to dismiss the growing power of the Pan-African consciousness on the continent of Africa, now they have an example of a Pan-African victory thanks to the electoral victory of Pastef in Senegal. And then when they were campaigning, they said that they were going to renegotiate all the contracts that the state of Senegal signed with the multinationals. They said that France has to be only one among many partners of Senegal. And they said that they were going to think about the possibility of leaving the CFA franc. So this is what is happening in Africa. And thanks, Jackie, for giving me the opportunity to share that with the listeners. And then we are excited about that. And then we hope that they meet the needs of the people, and then they do what everyone expects them to do. Now, I'm going to end now with the 9th Pan-African Congress.
Yeah.
So in Africa right now, when people are in the streets and people are doing the struggles in the respective countries that I've mentioned, we saw that there's like a gradual shift, like in the attitude of the African leaders. The turning point was 2013, when under the leadership of Dr. Zuma, who was like in the South African government, and she was the leader of the African Union Commission. The African leaders adopted and they call that the Agenda 2063, which is a vision of Africa in the next 50 years or so, as they did that in 2013. And then that Agenda 2063, compared to the Lagos Plan of Action 1980, compared to the Treaty of Abuja 1991, compared to NEPA 2013, the Agenda 2063 clearly claimed Pan-Africanism. So we can see since that time, many African leaders using the narrative of Pan-Africanism, while people in the streets are fighting, and as they were claiming also the revival of Pan-Africanism on the ground. So in that context, we seem to observe that those leaders, somehow each one of them wants to do something related to Pan-Africanism, political opportunism, or what? I don't know. But they seem to be adjusting, and they seem to be adapting themselves to the current, to the current, if I can use that expression. So, Museveni from Uganda.
Okay.
Museveni from Uganda was somehow trying to sponsor some Pan-African gatherings in Uganda. In January, Museveni organized the G77 meeting of the non-alignment movement in Uganda.
Okay.
That was this year, January.
Oh, January this year.
This year. And then, okay. And then last year in September in Kenya, William Ruto.
Oh.
No, that's why you I'm giving facts. Okay, so
don't give us names in Pan-Africanism. Just don't go to
it's okay. It's okay. But when I talk about some other things, you should not laugh. So William Ruto from Kenya organized like a big meeting about climate justice.
Yes, he did.
And then in November 2023, Nana Akufo-Addo from Ghana organized that the big conference on reparations. Hundreds of people from the African diaspora were in Ghana. And then Ivory Coast, my country of origin, where that is led by somebody who is seen as an agent of neocolonialism.
Oh, wow.
Because he's always trying to help the French. I told you he was in favor of the military intervention against Niger.
Yes.
It was tasked by the African Union to be the champion of the second decade of the Agenda 2063. Yes, so this is what is happening in Africa. But listen, but the good thing is this. Don't laugh, Jackie. The good thing is that at least when they embrace the Pan-African narrative, somehow they seem to be giving a stronger how can I say that life to the Pan-African narrative.
Okay.
Because there are newsmakers, there are leaders. When they talk about something, they believe in that or not, they do it, and then many people can talk about all the elements. So what I'm trying to tell you is that the people are in the streets, right? And some of them are rising to power through elections or through a palace revolution or military coup or a popular uprising that led to the rise to power of some military officers. But the leaders, among whom some are not seen as great Pan-Africanists, seem to be embracing the Pan-African narrative. In that context, this now seems to be serious. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Togo convinced the African Union that they need to adopt the decade of the African roots and the African diaspora, 2021-2031.
Right.
As the UN decade for the people of African diaspora was about to end. I heard that it was extended for 5 more years. And
really?
Yes. So Togo took that initiative, and Togo decided to organize the 9th Pan-African Congress in the year 2024. Now, people are debating that Togo does not have the credibility to organize that the Pan-African Congress, but for me or for us, they are creating a space for us to have the conversation.
Okay.
And then it has been endorsed by the African Union, and then I spoke in the beginning about those 6 regional conferences, and then the other one, the conference in the diaspora, is going to be held in Brazil.
Yeah.
May 22, 2024. The one in Northern Africa is going to take place in Morocco, April 18.
Mhm.
And then there should be one in Congo Brazzaville. So
Oh,
listen to the names of the territories I'm giving you. So
mhm.
Morocco, Brazzaville. So even though those countries were not are not seen as a great Pan-African nation, I'm sorry with that light here.
Yeah, that's
Even though those nations are not seen as great Pan-African nations, at least they are hosting those regional conferences, and then people who are sincere about the Pan-African conversation, who have been working on Pan-Africanism for years, are
mhm.
taking advantage of the opportunities created, and are taking advantage of the spaces provided by those
Mhm.
territories, by those countries, in order to engage the conversation about how to conduct that Pan-African struggle. So this is what we need to know, and it is about the reinvention of Africa, and it's about the reform of the multilateral institutions. That is the theme of the Pan-African Congress to be held in Lomé in October. So the website is there. I am encouraging people to go. I was appointed president of the chairman of the scientific committee by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Togo, Professor Robert Dussé. And then the website is www.pac9-lome2024.com. So that is the website. Do you get it? Can you check? Let me see it.
No, what did I do wrong?
I'm going to say it again.
Okay.
PAC9 dash
Uh-huh.
LOME
That's what I did. Okay.
2024.com. That is the website. And
All right.
yeah, people can go and register and read more about the project. And then so this is what I can say about that.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And I don't know why this is not coming up for me at all.
Really?
No, be
No,
like boy.
no. I say pack.
Okay, thanks. I'm so sorry. All right.
Yes. Though you make me speak. You
That
think that
makes sense. Okay.
you think that my accent is like those Arabs, because Arabs, they don't know how to say P. And when they want to say P, they say B. No. I was saying P pack.
No, it's me. It's late in the day.
As Arab, I'm talking about Egyptian. I was there. So when they were telling me, they were telling me, I am pleased to meet with you. I was hearing, I am blessed to meet with you. So yes.
Well, I think one is better than the other. I think I like blessed. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're my people, my friends. So you saw the website, right?
Yes, got the website. I've shared it with everyone.
Can you put it on the screen? Let me see if we can
Where
put
are
it on the
you?
screen.
Okay. See the professor checking my work. See.
Yes, that's the website. So
There you
our
go.
people are there. So
Mhm.
they can. So yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. So all of the figures are there. Not all of them, but the most important ones are. This is Emilia Garvey's wife.
Mhm.
Yes, and then yes, Malcolm X is there.
Yep.
Maurice
You got
Bishop.
Queen Mother Moore on here.
Yes, of course.
Because I was about to say, wait, I don't see Queen Mother.
No, she's great. I thank God I know a little bit about her, so I admire her. So she has to be there.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, because you don't include Queen Mother Moore, then I have to come to your house.
no,
Like,
no.
what
She
is
has to be there. So,
what's wrong, sir?
yeah. So people who are talking, these are figures some of the people who stood up for Africa and the people of African descent across the globe. So we have to, the gentleman with glasses, yeah, we have to respect all those elements, those great figures.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nyaka, thank you so much for coming on and giving us an update about everything that is going on in the Sahel, in Senegal, in regard to the 9th Pan-Africanist Congress for international reparations. I think people don't really realize that colonialists, imperialists, capitalists, settler colonialists, They're internationalists. They organize together internationally. They don't have any qualms about sharing their plans with people in a different country who might not agree with everything they agree with, but as long as they agree on settler colonialism and capitalism and imperialism and colonialism and neo-colonialism, they'll do business with people. They don't have these, they rarely do the oppressors have these weird ideological struggles in the background while they're all planning to take all of our stuff and oppress us in the meantime. So I think we need to learn to kind of, yeah. And me, when I say we, I mean me too, because people just get on my nerves sometimes. Y'all, I just got to be real honest with that. I do a lot of work. Y'all know I'm going through a lot. I don't have patience for a lot of this silliness. So thank you, Dr. Lagoke, for coming on and being patient with me.
No, thanks for your wonderful work. So we are doing it, and that's the most important thing. And then we are bridging bridging the gap between the different groups of Africans, and then so yes, that's the most important thing. So I will keep people updated about the project, and then the website is there; they can go and see it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Nyaka. And you all of you in the chat, thank you so much for joining. We had 247 people watching. Why do I see just 2 little likes on my screen? I don't know what's going on, but please, y'all fix that. Stay tuned. Let's see. 2 Black is on now. Black Myths podcast. Hop on over there. And I will see you guys on Tuesday for the Remix Morning Show. Tomorrow, if you're in Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia area, tomorrow is Land Back Day. And Palestinian Youth Movement, I believe, is having a demonstration at DuPont Circle, I think at 12, to commemorate Land Back Day. I and BAP DC will be there tomorrow. So come on out and hang out with us if you are able. And there are some more activities coming up. BAP DC is doing a lot next week. But we'll talk to you later. Thank you so much. As always, y'all, be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. A luta continua. As always, the struggle continues. But if you keep struggling, I promise you, I really do promise you, victory is certain. We will win. Thanks, y'all. Have a good night.